What is psychotronics? The United States Psychotronics Association defines psychotronics as the science of mind-body-environment relationships and interdisciplinary science concerned with the interactions of matter, energy and consciousness. Joining me today is Scott Beutlich, the President of the U.S Psychotronics Association, and Dr. Glen Rein of the Quantum Biology Research Lab, who is one of the guest speakers at this year's Psychotronics conference being held in Illinois between the 17th and 19th of July 2015. Scott Beutlich and Glen Rein, welcome to New Dimensions TV.
Thank you, Richard. Pleasure to be here.
Same here.
Great to have you on the show today, guys. All of us at New Dimensions TV wholeheartedly support the great work that you're all doing. Scott, if I can ask you the first question for the benefit of our viewers, what exactly is psychotronics? And perhaps you can give us a little history on how the association came to be and what your goals are here.
Well, Richard, psychotronics is a word that has two parts to it, psycho meaning mind and tronics meaning devices. It's the interaction of conscious intent and a device or a protocol system to be able to strengthen that intent and make transformations out into the world. The term was actually created by a Dr. Zbigniew Rajek of Czechoslovakia back in the 1960s, and then it was transferred around the world through various studies of psychic phenomena and other related scientific New Age type scenarios that were being studied at the time. The USPA, the United States Psychotronics Association, began its first meeting in 1975 in Indianapolis when a Native American medicine man, psychic, and electrical engineer named J.G. Gallimore invited everyone who purchased his book called Unusual Energies. This book, Unusual Energies, went through the whole gamut of energies that were not discussed in current physics paradigms. Energies used for healing, energies used for clairvoyance and psychic phenomena, energies used by radionics machines, and many other examples. 75 people showed up to Indianapolis, and that began our organization. Originally, it was called United States Radionics Congress, but the term radionics, which refers to a device created by a very famous American doctor from San Francisco, Dr. Abrams, in the late 1800s, this term radionics, a healing practice, which has now been expanded to agriculture, this practice of radionics was made illegal in the United States in the 1960s. Europe, you're allowed to use chiropractors and other healers are allowed to use this. In the United States, it's only allowed on agricultural and personal family members. Radionics was a black box with dials on it that a person would put intent and tune into frequencies of the patient or the animal or plant, and then try to pass on healing energies to it. The original black box didn't even have any wiring in it. Now black boxes have coils and amplifiers and witness wells and other things to help apply. The U.S. Psychotronics Association, as it became known in 1977, after 2 years of using radionics in its name, we thought that psychotronics would be a little more broader field, attracted many people, many with military backgrounds, intelligence backgrounds, who were studying various phenomena of the day, including Soviet mind control. We had a couple of the leading investigators in the private area who discovered the woodpecker signal that the Soviets were bombarding the U.S. with in the mid-70s to late 70s. And they also came up with a solution to it. And so our organization actually gained quite a bit of credibility with the intelligence organizations, and they followed us. And we had people at our meetings, men in black, who were looking to see what new investigations scientists on the outside of the military community were doing. We also had farmers and other types of radionics people and healers and psychics who were looking for a forum, a place to go to share their information, scientifically look at what's going on. We didn't have any trouble accepting that there were phenomena in the world. Our question is why, and that's what the USPA is, an organization of educational scientists and lay people who get together to support one another and to try to push the new paradigms of physics.
Glenn, what's your involvement in the association and this year's conference?
Well, Richard, my background is in biomedical research, and I have been trained at various academic institutes in America, and I became very intrigued in the 1980s by the fact that scientists were also looking not at drugs as how they heal the body, but electromagnetic fields. So I got involved with the Bioelectromagnetics Society way back then. And then, at around the same time, in the 80s, I got involved with the Psychotronics organization because, I don't know, they felt more like brothers and similar spirited individuals who I could relate to a lot better than the traditional scientists. And and ever since then, I've stayed with them and eventually got invited to be an officer and a board member, and I've continued my research in this area because actually there are very few hard scientists who are interested in this sort of subject, and that by my nature I sort of tend to gravitate toward research that other people are not doing. So I have continued my research, and what Scott was talking about, the unusual energies, and that intrigues me to no end as a biologist, because I'm very interested in how these energies heal the body, and the fact that the chemistry and the biochemistry in the body is in fact regulated and controlled by these, quotes, subtle energies. So for many years I've been talking about exactly what Scott mentioned, how these energies work and why they work and what happens in the body when we receive these energies, and their role in the natural healing process. And this year I will continue to talk about my research, which is never ending, it seems.
Thanks for that, guys. You've got a great history behind you. Can you tell us a little more about your upcoming conference in mid-July this year? Scott, if I can ask you to respond first.
Well, Richard, our conference will be our 37th annual conference starting since 1975. We've had a 4-year hiatus since the passing of a couple of our noble leaders in 2011, but we're ready and up for action this year. We are going to meet just outside of Chicago at the Glenview Wyndham Suites, just north of O'Hare Airport. We have 22 speaking spots and 20 different speakers. We start off Friday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we finish at Sunday at 5 o'clock. There's also workshops on Sunday night, Monday, and Tuesday. And there's a pre-conference special that I'm running called The Strange Physics of Water Dowsing, or Divining. And it's a subject that my dad, one of the original members, and I did inside my physics classes outside of Chicago for over 20 years, teaching kids how to dowse, what auras are, and different paradigms about physics and how time and space can be different for the mind compared to what we call the physical world. So that'll be open to the public on Thursday, and information about the conference is at psychotronics.org. We have 3 keynote speakers. One is Richard Allen Miller, who's a favorite of yours on your show, and he's an interesting man who was a CIA advisor. He was the original Man in Black. He is what Mulder was created after. In fact, we even had his handler come to quite a few of our conferences and even did some lectures, Carl Schleicher, from the Mankind Research Association. Again, a front for CIA activity involving trying to figure out things that nobody else could explain. And that's right up our psychotronics alley in terms of what our history has been throughout. So Richard is speaking on the 4 worlds of defense and the holographic universe on Saturday. He's speaking on one of Glen Rein's favorite topics, structured water, on Sunday. And he's also doing a workshop on how to live off the grid for 30 days. And he's doing another workshop on Monday that is about training like a Navy SEAL, how to increase your intuition. He came up with that protocol before Navy SEALs were called Navy SEALs. He came up with a protocol on how to teach people when they came up to a fork in the road, which way is the best way to go without over-analyzing with your analytic mind, but using your gut and making an intuitive decision, which works out better the majority of times. We also have Kathy Forty, a psychologist, who's speaking on Friday night in a 2-hour session. She had a near-death experience about 25 years ago and has spent the rest of that time creating a device, a patterning fractal device that interacts with people and helps them with different issues that they have. The third keynote speaker we have is Ellen Kami. She's from New York. She's called the Natural Nurse, and she's always been one of our favorites at USPA with great practical health advices and the latest on updated information on healing. So we also have Norm Shealy, who's going to be Skyping in with us this morning, or on Saturday morning, and he's also one of our favorites and a past board member who was a medical doctor on the presidential staff of Eisenhower and Kennedy, and came up with this idea that you don't really need back surgery. You can use these frequencies, electronic medicines, to heal all back problems. And that's a fantastic lecture that we're going to hear on Saturday morning. We also have about 6 or 7 different radionics people, mostly involved in agriculture and farming, but some involved in personal health and healing as well. And we're one of the only organizations in the country where people can get together that way to see this kind of information. So we'd like you to join us, psychotronics.org. And maybe Glenn can now tell you what his talk is going to be about.
Glenn, I can see from your speaker's bio that you're going to be talking about biomolecular transitions to higher order states from 4D to 5D. Can you give us some further information on this subject matter?
Well, as I said earlier, the focus of my research has always been using the subtle energies that Scott is talking about for healing purposes. And since this year we invited Kathy Forte to speak as a keynote speaker, I decided to do a slightly different lecture, mostly to prepare the audience for her talk. And that was my original incentive. And then I kind of realized that there's a lot of material that I've never spoken about before, and that really needs to be elaborated. And that is to say, the use of the subtle energies that we use in psychotronics, not so much for the healing purposes, but to help raise our consciousness, awareness, and our ability to interact with other people in a conscious kind of way. So what I'm going to be talking about this year is what actually happens in the body at the biomolecular level when people receive the subtle energies that we use in psychotronics, and particularly the subtle energies that Kathy Forte uses in her technology. Is how geometric patterns, when observed through the visual system, and the energies associated with these geometric patterns, can actually affect our mind and affect our consciousness.
Why hasn't the scientific community embraced psychotronics? Glenn, over to you first on this one.
Oh, that's a great question, Richard. And it's a question that we thought about a lot over the 40-odd years that we've been doing this kind of conferencing. And my personal answer to that is has to do with, Scott said in the introduction, the fact that the mind and consciousness is something that's very rarely discussed within the scientific community, or had not been discussed much. Recently, physicists are starting to incorporate consciousness into their models of the universe, and of course biologists are interested in the mind from a psychology point of view, but they don't consider the mind as being taking an active role in the healing, the healing process. I mean, well, I guess they do, but they don't consider the energies of the mind. And our focus has always been on understanding exactly how the mind and intention and consciousness can promote healing. So in a nutshell, the problem that we have is that the conventional biomedical community will acknowledge the fact that the mind plays a role in your own healing processes. In other words, you can direct your mind to an illness that you have in your liver or something, and that's allowed, and that in the scientific community, and that's called psychoneuroimmunology, the influence of mind-body, the influence of mind over the body. And that's a legitimate area of investigation within the scientific community. However, when you say that my mind can influence your body, then that's where the distinction is made, because there is no acknowledgement that the energies of the mind can travel from one person to another, and let alone the energies from some of the psychotronics devices that we work with, because as Scott said in the beginning, these are called unusual or subtle energies. So therein lies the problem, and the focus, again, of my research has been to make this area of investigation more scientific, so that the research can be published in a peer-reviewed journal, and that our colleagues can read the research and say, oh, okay, this is interesting, and it's a worthwhile area of investigation.
Well, from a physicist's point of view, I've studied the fact that change in science has always been a difficult thing. When Copernicus came up with his ideas, and Kepler and Newton, resistance to change has always been there. When Maxwell came up with his theories of electromagnetism, and Hertz came up with the idea that there exists radio signals, there was opposition. When Tesla came up with his ideas, there was opposition. And then money got involved and things were held back. And we're still in the same kind of scenario now. Our medical community was forced to add placebos to their testing. And placebos, as Glenn was referring to, involve the personal interactions of the patient and their body. And there's something going on with placebos right now that is incredible. When it comes to psychotic drugs, the placebo rate, instead of being 40%, is over 60%. And the drug companies can't figure out what's going on, and they're not very happy with that. They weren't very happy beating 40% placebo rate when people which is the passing rate that drugs have to pass. And they allow some of them to pass just a little bit over 40, and the side effects are incredible. Then, when you get into the laying on of hands and other kinds of influences that people can have on one another, the scientific community isn't ready to go with the fact that consciousness has this power. Physics doesn't even bring consciousness into the table. And yet, in physics today, we have 97% of the energy in the universe that's undefined, and we're not actually very close to defining it or understanding how it works. Why not change the parameters in physics and allow for multiple dimensions, allow for other types of energies, like what we use the term scalar waves, a type of wave that the brain can create, and that we have crude instruments on measuring and detecting and creating. And that's the new wave of physics, is to involve consciousness and to allow us an incredible amount of power over our world, or with our world, I should say.
Glen, can you share with us some of the important research you've done on intention and subtle energies and healing?
Richard, that's a great question, and thank you for that. I want to go back to what Scott said earlier about water, and the fact that water has a remarkable ability to store energy, information, and conscious intention. I think most of your audience will be aware of Dr. Emoto's work, and although that was not done scientifically, there is now increasing scientific evidence that water does have the ability to store information. So water is one of the particular areas that I'm interested in. Of course, the body is, 70-80% water, but and all cells in the body are surrounded by water. So obviously the cells, and the cells in the body seem to have the ability to read the information that is stored in water. So as a biologist, I'm very intrigued by that, and one of the focuses of my research has been asking the question about what is the different kinds of energies that can be stored in water, and particularly the energies associated with conscious intention and the energies associated with radionics type of geometric patterns. And I've been able to measure the changes in water using various forms of spectroscopy, which is a standard Western acceptable scientific piece of equipment which measures the ability of light to absorb different kinds of electromagnetic fields. And what I've been able to show is that both conscious intention and geometric patterns do have energies which can change the physical properties of water. And most interestingly, when I combine the two, which is what is typically done with radionics devices and radionics practitioners, there's a very complex interaction between the different energies I just mentioned, and in combination they create different effects on water than either of the two individually. So this is our first little bit of understanding about psychotronics and radionics and how the different energies that are utilized in this treatment modality can interact with each other, interact with water. And of course the next question for me then is, how does the body read this complex information patterns generated by the two different modalities?
Thanks for being on the show today, guys, and good luck with the conference later this month.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks for having us. Pleasure.
For more information about the U.S. Psychotronics Association conference, visit their website on www.psychotronics.org, where you can see more of what these amazing people are doing for the good of humanity. Thank you for your continued support. We look forward to seeing you next time on New Dimensions TV.
Bye.